Well, let's get right into the juicy stuff then. Like, how did you actually end up joining Leftover Crack? How did that idea present itself?
Um, I think when there was that horrific ban on Sturgeon performing for like 5 years, um,
Well,
Reagan
let,
Youth,
let's get deep into this because I know nothing. Like, I heard he was cancelled. But when
yeah,
someone cancels someone that I like, I don't pay attention to it. I still love Stza. I still love his music. So
right.
actually don't know anything about what happened. So you can educate me on that if you like.
Well, it's going to be from my point of view as an outsider. So, I was on tour with Reagan Youth in California, and I'm scrolling on Instagram, and I saw something that Sturgeon had posted about being suicidal. I had always kept up with Sturgeon over the years, even though we hadn't seen each other. But just as a fellow musician, and I mean, he had asked me out. Like I had a crush on him, and I didn't act on it. So I just wanted to make sure he was doing okay. I sent him a message just to say, like, hey, what's up? If you ever need to talk, I'm available. I never heard of the band Days and Days. Um, Reagan Youth was playing out in California, and Sturgeon was in California and had tickets to our show. So that's how we reconnected. And he came to visit me in Philadelphia afterwards. He brought me an acoustic bass. We started dating, and that's when I really got the full story of what happened. He had dated this woman, they had a horrible breakup, and she hit the internet hard with a lot of accusations. And that's all I knew at that point. I didn't know what was true, what wasn't. So I went, typical me, deep into investigating to find the truth because I always want to know the truth of matters. And I cleaned out Sturgeon's apartment, and I have to say things very carefully because I despise cancel culture and I don't want to badmouth his ex. And no matter what her drug or psychological issues are, I think that she has every right to perform because that's private life and there's enough venues and bands for everyone to perform. But like accusations that are ungrounded and gathering a whole bunch of people to attack someone is abusive. It's just an abusive way to treat people, and I don't agree with it. So that's what I saw playing out. And from what I found was that the accusations against him were absolutely not true. Um, there was a lot of mental illness that's proven. I found schizophrenic meds. I found jars of meth in her bags. And this is public knowledge. I'm not shit talking anybody. And there are people present during the breakup that witnessed what happened. But everyone's scared of being canceled. So no one was speaking up to stick up for Sturgeon. I think the other thing was that Sturgeon is difficult to work with at times. Um, he's also somewhere on the spectrum of autism and has ADHD and is extremely willful in his vision of what he wants and very easily frustrated when people don't agree with what he wants to do musically. So I think there are people that had grudges against him that just saw this as an opportunity to attack. And I can really only go by what I was told and what I heard. Sturgeon wanted out of this relationship, and this his ex self injured herself and had carpal tunnel syndrome and used that as this proof that he had been physically abusive. And all of this stuff is documented. I've timelined where things were posted online in terms of like GoFundMe's for carpal tunnel syndrome. Then that turned into this hand injury. I find it extremely hard to believe that a not physically violent person injured both hands. Like thinking of how that would play out is highly implausible. I know that what's documented is that he locked himself in his room and she was pounding on the door. He wanted to be left alone, and there were bruises on her hands from that. So, and I also found the phone. I read a lot of that and I stopped because I was like, ugh, I don't even want to know this stuff. So there's a lot of threats of, if you don't do this, I'm going to say this. And there's other characters involved that were really gung ho in bringing him down. And I think if this had happened to a less controversial, known musician, if it was like just some Joe Schmo, no one would give a shit. I think because he writes songs about killing cops and he's very politically adamant about his vision, which doesn't really mesh well with the early hardcore, which is more conservative. Like Agnostic Front kind of rebranded themselves. So I feel like there was a lot of other reasons that people seize the opportunity to take him down, on top of this fear of speaking up for him and ending up banned. So I was like, why don't you just sing for Reagan Youth? Because we don't give a flying fuck. Like, I could care less about what people say about me online. I really don't give a shit. So, and Paul didn't either. We had our own bout with cancellation, and it was so stupid. Paul was an epic level shit talker, so he's kind of uncancelable because people would say stuff to him and he'd hit the internet in caps lock and just say horrible things in response. It was almost like he was trolling himself. So it was like you can't argue with someone who's just enjoying the argument. Like he would just lay in bed and it was like a comedy routine to him. So I felt honored. I was so psyched. Like we finally had a singer who understood the politics at the end of our band. And we broke that nonsense ban on him Sturgeon being allowed out in public in Tompkins Square Park. And, we performed the last Reagan Youth show with him singing. So that's what really started us working together. I really was initially against being in any of Sturgeon's bands because I was scared of being Sturgeon's wife, like being known as like Stza's wife, like, his wife's in the band now, like what a drag, like a mooch. And what happened was we were supposed to record a Reagan Youth song in California. I've had issues with Cleopatra. We showed up to record, and for reasons I'll never know, we were locked out of the recording studio. I'm standing there in broad sunlight, which I freaking hate. I'm locked out of Cleopatra's studio. I didn't even like the song to begin with. Our flights weren't covered. I'm not getting any reply on the phone. And Sturgeon's sitting there in the car, and things just clicked in my head. Like I turned around and Sturgeon was like, why don't we just go record a leftover crack song? I'll book a show, and can you learn a couple of songs on bass and we'll play a show together? And I was like, sure. Like, this is fucked. So I'm going to do that now. So I just, I've always had this philosophy that in order to survive, you need to be adaptable in life. And decided if anyone has a problem with me as Stza's wife in the band, they can just talk about it on Reddit.
Well, how do you think cancel culture wormed its way into punk rock anyway? Because, like, from my perspective, it seems there's too many people in society now that are going around trying to remove toxicity from their lives. So they think you're a toxic person, you have to go. They don't even want to look at any evidence. It's like, I've made my mind up, you're gone. That's it.
Yeah,
Like, you can make a joke and just isolate yourself completely. Like, that's an actual thing that will happen to me. Like,
right. It happened to me too. And the stuff that was posted online was askew. I mean, it was like out there. It had nothing to do with reality. And I think it empowers people who don't feel that they have control over things that are really fucked up in the world. So I feel like their heart's in the right place. They want to stick up for abuse against women. They want to stick up for people who are anti trans, anti gay. But the way it plays out is this oppressive form of censorship that's often based on a lie. And the information is pushed so fast. One meme can define an entire person's existence right now. And I think it's like a dopamine addiction. It feels good, I'd imagine, if you're like some kid stuck in your parents' house, not getting a lot of attention, to have control over someone who gets a lot of attention and to suddenly get all this validation. Like maybe some of their posts had like 12 or 13 likes. Now they're getting a few hundred. That has to be an addictive type of feeling and a sense of belonging to a group and making a change in the world. So that's my take on it. I think it's just kind of like the right idea played out horribly wrong. So I'll go online unhinged sometimes and write a huge rant, and sometimes I'll just write a few sentences like, please think for yourself, investigate, ask questions, contact us, contact the person who's being attacked, because oftentimes, like, that's someone being ganged up on and bullied, and like oftentimes it's a scapegoat for someone who actually is doing something fucked up. The thing that I find really scary is that the end goal that I experienced and I see with Sturgeon is that the people that are really attacking want him like gone. It seems like they want to delete this person's existence. They call it like accountability culture, but that's like some kind of gaslighting language that's really in line with narcissistic abuse, because how many times has he addressed the issue? I've addressed the issue. The issue's addressed. It's a relationship that's been over for 3 years, and he's done so much work and has come through addictions, being oppressed, censored, not allowed to play out, dropped off a record label, and people don't want to let it go. So, like, what do they want? Like, what do they want? They want this guy, you know? So I think it's like my goal in this band is just to prove the present reality. Like, let's be in the here and now. Like, the past is being told wrong, and the present speaks volumes because that's the living proof.
Well, what was it like actually getting on stage with Leftover Crack for the first time? Because this is an iconic band to so many people. Now you're on that stage singing these iconic songs to this crowd.
What's funny is I didn't really realize how big Sturgeon's band was. And I had learned all the songs on bass. I did not have faith in him being able to find a bass player just from experience that was going to show up and really be able to play those songs. And he had been saying that I needed to learn the lyrics. And I was like, I'm going to learn bass. So every night from midnight to 4 a.m., I was playing bass to level up my skills because Alec was phenomenal and I was nowhere near his playing ability. About like 2 weeks before tour, we get Mark Cody, who slays on bass. And I was like, moved to vocals. I was like, oh shit, I do not know the lyrics. So I had to do those first tours with a lot of lyrics on stage. Embarrassing. I just decided I'm just going to have the lyrics. This is a punk experience. They're going to just have to see the real deal. I'm learning the lyrics on stage. And if they don't like it, just go complain. I don't care because, oh my God, there's a lot of lyrics to learn. But the crowds that come out are, I'd say, way different than I experienced with the hardcore scene, and that it was extremely mixed up age wise, very diverse community wise. Like, you give people discounts bringing EBT cards. I always have homeless friends that are on the guest list. So does Sturgeon. Um, a lot of girls, all ages. So it was just a mixed up batch of people having a blast, and they know all the lyrics. So they're helping me out. Very positive and fun. So it was great. Like, it's hard to go out and talk to everyone because we have to preserve our voices. But it was the first time in a long time that I really wanted to go out and interact with everyone and meet people and hang out after a show because they're really cool people there.
Well, on the last episode, we had Stza Crack on, and we celebrated 20 years of Fuck World Trade. Do you have a favourite track from this masterpiece?
um, oh, oh my God. If I have to pick a favorite song, you know, my favorite songs are really from Constructs of the State because they're a little bit more hip hop in the vocal styling. And I like going back and forth with Sturgeon in that way. That's like how I sing. I love Clear Channel. I think Clear Channel right now is my favorite song. I had really had to convince Sturgeon to go back and forth, to town, to state, the same old songs we love to hate, you know? And so that's like where I feel like I thrive vocally, and that's kind of how we're writing for the new album.